Mishcon Academy digital sessions.
Thank you for joining us for this, our first event of the Purpose Hub. Over the last couple of years, we've been focusing beyond our core values onto our purpose and thinking about what that really means to us. We've done that through coming up with a purpose statement, which for us is to enable our clients and our people to shape the world's possibilities. And our focus is on our key stakeholders, our clients and our people. The second bit is to focus on impact. To help us through that process, we have used the B Corp framework. B Corp is an international standard started in America. It's a certification for responsible business. We got to know it when it came to the UK about 6 years ago, and we set up a pro bono relationship helping businesses through the legal change to become B Corp certified. Now, what that legal change entails is changing the constitution of your business to put a commitment to positive environmental and social impact in your objects clause. So just as important as anything else. And we got to know the framework and the standard pretty well, and we decided to use it ourselves. As we began to focus more and more about the impact we were having and how we could drive that, we focused obviously on our people and on our clients. And that really is part of the genesis of our practice, Mishcon Purpose, which I head within the firm. Through that process and through some of the conversations we were having with clients in all sorts of different areas of our business, we found that community was an important part. And so we decided to launch this, the Purpose Hub, focused around 3 C's. Community, as I mentioned, collaboration, and convening. And so the convening part is what we're doing in person for the first time today. You're going to hear first from Christina, and Christina's going to talk about a project that we have been running to look at youth enfranchisement in the context of climate change.
So as Alex mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the Global Youth Climate Inquiry. Essentially the genesis for the idea of running a climate inquiry was that young people are one of the most impacted sections of society when it comes to climate issues, but probably the least enfranchised in being able to do anything about it. What we aimed to do with the inquiry was to gather together young climate leaders, sustainability leaders, and see what the best initiatives they had come across within their communities. In order to do this, we partnered with an organisation called One Young World, which is a youth leadership organisation. It's global. And we also partnered with the Democracy and Culture Foundation. In terms of the inquiry, we ran a call for evidence in September and October this year. We collected in submissions from young people from all around the world, reviewed all of the submissions, and invited a few of the people who had submitted evidence to come to panel events. The process of the panel events, or the point of it, was to bring together these sort of inspirational young people, but also leaders in various different fields related to sustainability. And the idea was to facilitate this intergenerational dialogue, sort of bridge that gap. Once we'd done that, the Mishcon team, who are acting as a sort of secretariat for the inquiry, collated all of that evidence into a report. And then we worked with One Young World to present that report at COP26. The positivity seemed to be the key message. These are people who are actually doing things, and this is what you could do. This is what we want to encourage. We don't want people to feel like they're powerless. I think the next steps for us are to review the initiatives which came out of it. We need funding for these projects. So if anyone's got any funding, just let me know. But I think we've got a really strong partnership behind us with One Young World, and I think whatever happens, we'll be able to take it forwards.
I'm here to talk about climate migration, and this is a topic which most people don't know much about, including me about a year ago. We read a lot about it, we got involved, we spoke to charities, NGOs in the area, and we convened a stakeholders group. We spoke for about half a day in relation to all the difficulties around the subject, including the title itself. Most people will have heard of climate refugee as being the most common use term in the media. Of course, that has lots of negative connotations. So we removed the word refugee and we refer to climate migrants. So the project was born. We now have a podcast. We took the climate migration to COP. There are figures out there which are astounding. Apparently, they're going to be around 100 million displaced people due to climate change by 2050. And it's already started. We're not talking about in 10, 15, 20 years. On a daily basis, people are displaced due to climate change. At the beginning of the project, we wrote to the Home Office in the UK, and we asked, under the Freedom of Information Act request, for some data. We said, how many asylum applications, how many visa applications, humanitarian applications have been made that have cited climate change? Their response, we don't have any data. What are we going to do with the climate migration project? Number one, educate people. Number two, we want to lobby the government, of course. One very big change that we would like to implement is a definition of climate migrants. There is no such thing. There is no such legislation. There is no such protection for any climate migrants at the moment. And finally, this is why we're here. We just want to talk about it more and more and educate our friends and families as well as the wider public.
Thank you, Maria, Alex and Christina, for that. The purpose of the Purpose Hub, for lack of a better phrase, is to be collaborative and talk about the issues that are important to our members. We had a poll on our LinkedIn page to determine the topics for this evening. We put forward 8 different topics, and the top 3 are sat here in front of you. We've got Neil Sharp talking to us about ESG and incentives. We've got Sarah Sperling talking to us about sustainability and finance. And we've got Tom talking to us about data and ESG and all things purpose and sustainability. So over to you, Neil.
What I do and members of my team do is advise companies on the sort of incentives they can put in place for their employees and their executives. And part of that involves, well, what sort of targets are companies going to put into their bonus plans and their long-term bonus plans, which are going to incentivize executives mostly, but also employees, to achieve those targets, and at the end of achieving them, receive a payout. Certainly at the listed company level, there is continual headlines in the press around companies incorporating ESG into their strategies. Their financial services companies are now looking at ways in which they can reduce their carbon footprint and ways that they can incorporate ESG into their company strategy. There are, of course, the specialist B Corp companies who we hope won't be specialist for very much longer, where ESG is built into the constitution of the business. But coming back to companies that are not B Corp, or nearly all of them are looking to become net zero. Any listed companies wants to become net zero. But on the social side, a lot of them want to incorporate more diversity and inclusion into their business. They want to make sure they pay a living wage. They want to make sure that there is gender representation right across the board. And then on the governance side, they want to reduce their risk of overpaying employees, overpaying executives when things go wrong. A key way they can do that, of course, is to make sure, in particular, that their executives are incentivized to make sure that these things actually happen in the business. Just in the last year, FTSE 100 companies have increased their ESG metrics in executive pay from 45% to 60%. And for long-term incentives, so these are ones where there's a payout after 3 years, typically, the increase has doubled from 15% of companies incorporating some ESG metric into those long-term incentives to now around 30%. And really, they're getting pressure from three areas. There are investors themselves. You'll have probably all heard about greenwashing. This is where investment funds are set up. They proclaim to have green credentials. They're only investing in companies that promote sustainability and reduce their carbon footprint. But in fact, quite a lot are not. And some regulators are now looking at those companies and those funds to find out how genuine they are. But those funds, aside from the greenwashing, those funds are looking to invest in companies that are promoting ESG. And so they are putting pressure on companies to say, where are your ESG credentials? The other pressure is coming from customers. And then the third pressure is coming from employees. And so what we're seeing is that for annual bonuses, a lot of the ESG targets are around social. A lot of them are to do with diversity and inclusion. A lot of them are to do with paying a living wage. What investors want is more and more transparency around what the targets are and how easy they are to achieve. Because investors are very concerned that these are soft targets. It's going to be quite interesting to see the battle between regulators and shareholders versus companies and the speed of progress that we see over the next few years in this area.
Now on to Sarah.
So my interest is principally in green and sustainability-linked loans in a real estate finance context. And just a point of language, when we're talking about green loans, we're talking about loans where the proceeds are used for a particular green project versus sustainability-linked loans where the proceeds of the loan in question are going to be used for general corporate purposes or any given transaction of a corporate, but the terms of the loan are structured and intended to incentivise the general sustainability of the borrower. And there's been a lot of discussion in sort of debt finance world around how to bring ESG principles into loan documents. A number of industry organisations, they have come together to try and encourage some sort of collective thinking, and they've brought out green loan principles and sustainability linked loan principles. And they intend to sort of create a bit of a framework. All of those principles focus straight in on the importance of setting key performance indicators and in using those to set sustainability performance targets. In principle, if a borrower hits those SPTs, then they will get some kind of financial incentive under the terms of their loan. And in recent loans, we're actually seeing it work both ways. So you will set your SPTs, and if you hit them, you get a reduced margin. But if you miss them by a particular amount, then you will actually get an increased margin. There's been some commentary recently that there's a sort of reluctance to have real teeth around these targets by making it a default under the loan if you don't hit them. I think the general feeling at the moment is that if you have that kind of default structure, you're going to discourage ambitious target setting, which is the opposite of what people are looking to do at the moment. So there's this sort of feeling that it's more carrot than stick is the preference. And those sort of pricing mechanisms are quite easy for us to work into a loan. They exist in all sorts of covenant compliance settings, but the real difficulty with ESG and sustainability linked loans is what the metrics should be. Some of the biggest challenges that we're coming across with some of our lender clients is the fact that to be meaningful, the KPIs themselves need to be selected with an eye to the specific borrower and asset that you're looking at. And then the SPTs, the targets that you're setting them, equally need to be very much focused and aiming to stretch that particular borrower. It means that historical data is absolutely critical to be able to assess these things. And then you factor in that your criteria will need to flex for the kind of property you're dealing with. And then you factor in the nervousness with lenders of getting caught out looking only at the end product and not the wider kind of sustainability credentials of the borrower, the group, the UBO, the supply chain. It's really complicated stuff. Where we're going to end up, I'm sure, is you will have a set of green loans and they will be quite heavily structured and quite specialist, but quite limited in number because there's a limited number of green projects out there for funding. And then I think eventually we'll end up with sustainability-linked loans not being necessarily their own standalone piece, but being a set of concepts that start to apply more generally across most loans. And certainly most traditional lenders are very alive to the fact that they need to be seen to be encouraging sustainable behaviour, but also nervous of being accused of greenwashing and looking at the surface level and not getting enough into the nitty-gritties.
So I'm Tom. I used to be a lawyer here. I now head up a part of the group called MDRX Tech. So we design and build tech-enabled businesses, strategies, software projects and software products for clients across a variety of industries. And I think in the climate ESG space in particular, we're moving away from this culture of tell me what you do towards a culture of show me what you do and explain how you do it. The tech is ready, and it's been ready for probably 5 or 6 years now, to enable us to collect data to back up the claims that companies are making. We're seeing a number of companies and clients who, quite excitingly, are looking at the way the world is now and saying, why is it like that? That's stupid. We can do it better, and we can use technology to do it better. So one example I'll give, it's in the carbon space, but I think it's super important that we all recognise that sometimes ESG and carbon are used very interchangeably. That's just one part of E. We've got a really interesting client at the moment who is a landowner that has been in the carbon credits market game for about 20 years. And they've looked at the way it currently works and thought this can't be the best way that we do this. And so they're trying to address the problem in 3 ways. Firstly, they're looking at the pure science. The way we as a society understand how much carbon is sequestered from a bit of biomass, like a leaf, is rubbish. It's like 1960s science. It's awful. And so they are undertaking, and the company's called CSX, stands for Climate Solutions Exchange. They've got a research project ongoing at the moment with the University of Oxford, University of Ghent, fixing that science problem. And the second thing they're doing is calculate how much biomass there is. Again, the way it's currently calculated, the number of trees in a forest, the amount of biomass in a forest is a joke. What these guys are doing is they're using machine learning to scan sort of video and photogrammetry, so satellite data, which is freely available or very cheaply available, in addition to drone footage, and they're deploying machine learning and they're measuring the biomass. So we're not guessing anymore. And the third part that they're doing and we're doing with them is standing up a marketplace to allow other landowners who actually care about selling the right thing and other buyers who actually care about buying the right thing to make that change.
Hopefully you're all signed up to the LinkedIn page for the Purpose Hub. If not, go ahead and sign up. So thank you very much for joining, everybody, and looking forward to get to know you all as the Purpose Hub hopefully develops and grows and becomes the network that we all want it to be. Thank you.
The Mishcon Academy Digital Sessions. To access advice for businesses that is regularly updated, please visit mishcon.com.